call this meeting to order. I will note at the beginning that we are missing one member. Judge McClellan indicated that he had a case that he was mediating today that he thought was going to start at a particular point in time. And of course, nothing ever goes the way that you expect it to. And so he said he would be a little late, but he is planning to arrive at some point during the course of the meeting. I also have indicated to this group that my philosophy is that the brain can only absorb as much as the derriere. And so this meeting will last approximately an hour, give or take. We have some things we would like to get to, but when we get close to an hour, we're probably going to call a halt. So I would ask that the clerk call a roll.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is 3:03 p.m. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. It is Monday, August 19th, and this is the Juvenile Court Advisory Subcommittee. Calling the roll, Judge Adrian.
Here.
Ms. Yaram.
Here.
Judge Robert McClend is absent at the moment. Ms. Gibbons. Mr. Cross.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any public comments that have been signed up for?
Yes.
Thank you.
Pat Gladora.
Press the button to speak. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Sir.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Adrian, Vice Chair Yaram, and members of the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court Advisory Subcommittee.
Mr. Gladora, if you could state your name for the record, that would be greatly appreciated.
Akledura.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start over. Thank you, Chair Adrian, Vice Chair Yaram, and members of the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court Advisory Subcommittee for the opportunity to provide comments as you embark on this critically important work. My name is Pat Gladura, and I'm a policy strategist with the ACLU of Ohio. Today, I also address you as a member of the Greater CLE Youth Justice Collective, a coalition made up of the ACLU of Ohio, the Children's Law Center, and the Schubert Center for Child Studies at Case Western Reserve University. The Greater CLE Youth Justice Collective was formed to combat adultification in our children in the criminal legal system. Our hope is this subcommittee deliberately examines when and where opportunities exist to improve outcomes for our children as they work through the court system. We're focused on building support for youth in or at risk of entering the juvenile legal system through public education based on credible data and research, public and community partnerships, and the elevation of youth voice and experience. We understand and acknowledge that this is hard work, and stakes are high. We are working to reform a complicated system with a broad array of stakeholders, all wanting to have their vision actualized. We must commit to stay vigilant towards this subcommittee's goal, which is to improve the outcomes for our kids. The Greater CLE Youth Justice Collective is ready and willing to be a part of the solution. We welcome the opportunity to collaborate with this body to identify solutions and be a sounding board for creative approaches to improving public safety and protecting Cuyahoga County's kids' futures. We ask that you make publicly available any resources and documents that are being reviewed by the committee so the public may work alongside you in your endeavors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mr.?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Leah Winsberg.
Good afternoon, Chair Adrian, Vice Chair Yaram, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Leah Winsberg. I'm the Senior Policy Attorney with the Children's Law Center. You heard from my colleague, Sion Blackwell, at your meeting on the 1st, and we really appreciate not only your time and expertise that you're donating for this cause, but the invitation for all of us to be here, hear how your work is going, and also to share resources along your learning journey as well. So I wanted to, I'm not going to take much of your time this morning or this afternoon. I know you all have a lot on your agenda, but we submitted a letter on July 5th as a follow-up to your invitation to share some resources. And I just wanted to highlight a few points there that we do have, obviously some really exciting times at the state level, but your committee is focused to the county. And given that you all have a broad task, we think that it's really important to kind of look at a few different buckets of issues that you all identified at your first meeting. One is which we talked about how the deep end systems, kids who are ending up in our locked facilities, our state facilities, and the adult system can be really harmful on young people and doesn't yield much in terms of a public safety outcome. So if we can be of support to you all in trying to really think through how to reduce the reliance on those systems, we would be happy to be a thought partner in that, as well as thinking through how to invest in what Cuyahoga County has already put a lot of effort into, which is the JDAI, the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative Act. And we have some really great leadership coming out of the court. There's support statewide as well as nationally. And that model can really serve to help you all as you think through some of the large buckets that you want to kind of be rethinking, including alternatives to detention and reducing racial disparities. There are some pre-existing resources from the national level that can be really helpful for you all in terms of guiding some of that work. We also do recognize the committee's attention around our young people who are treated as adults and transferred to the adult court system. And while our state law is designated as it is, and we're not asking this committee to go to Columbus and lobby for changes, there are still opportunities where there are decision and discretion points in the local system that can be really impactful in terms of supporting keeping our young people in the system that's designed for them, which is more cost effective in the long run, but also really produces much better outcomes on the back end with public safety. So I know this committee isn't tasked with, but I do want to raise up that part of ensuring that young people are retained in the system that's appropriate for them is ensuring that they have attorneys who are educated, specialized, trained, and competent to understand the differences between the two systems and effectively advocate for them at every point and touch point. And we do feel very strongly that this committee has an opportunity to ensure that our county funds and state funds for reimbursement. May I continue, Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Are being utilized effectively, which we have outlined in our letter. And I also wanted to raise up that we provided some slides for you all via email, and we'd be happy to set up a time to talk either in a public space or privately to help support your learning journey with more information on those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't step away just yet. Any questions? First of all, I wanted to thank you and your organization and also the collective and its organization for all of the information that you've provided to us so far. I was having a conversation with members of the committee earlier today, and we really kind of feel a little inundated with information as we've tried to go through, because most of the stuff had links to other stuff. Yes. Which had links to other stuff.
Yes.
So it's really hard to go through. And so I would like to say to both you and the previous speaker that we're trying to stay in our lane, okay? Because we understand that we are an advisory board and that our primary responsibility is to give guidance to the council as to what it can do, especially around issues having to do with the budget. But having said that, we also would appreciate any kind of guidance that we could get from either organization as it relates to some of those things that having to do with alternatives to incarceration that you've seen, or the decision and discretion points that you think need some modification, and advocacy points that where you think that we need to give some guidance to the council for them to share with the court. Okay. So, I mean, we intend, at least it's my thought based on earlier conversations that we've had, that we're going to have some in-depth conversation with the people who have been doing this work for a while, because a lot of what I think that we would do it seems, has already been spaded up. And so there's no reason for us to reinvent wheels, and particularly when there's so much ground to be covered. So I just wanted to share that with you and with the gentleman that preceded you, that we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. That's helpful. And if there's a mechanism other than providing some follow-up, we'll try to kind of pare down and rethink how we can support you all without overdoing it. I can recognize how overwhelming it can be to receive, all of these different resources. So if there's a way that we can be supportive differently, other than sending, some follow-up via email, please let us know.
Yeah, at this juncture, truthfully, from my perspective, the best thing that you could do would be to help us hone this down to something manageable. There's no African proverb that says that the way that you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So,
Understood.
Again, from my perspective, I think that we want to do the things that are actually going to move the dial.
Thank you, Chair. Understood.
Yes, Marv.
I would like to kind of echo a little bit what the judge and I know some of the other members have said. We have received a lot of good information, and I thought I was pretty smart until I started reading all this. And it's just a lot to absorb. And like the judge said, I would like to also refine some of the things that I'm reading to some points that we can actually deal with, because it's a lot of, and it's all good information. I haven't seen anything that haven't been good, but I'm just being honest with people. It's really tough to try to read all of it and understand it all. So I'm with the rest of the group, and we do have some good people here that help us understand some different things, but it's just being honest, it's tough.
It's just like being a kid in a candy shop.
Yes.
I do think if we could do like a brief presentation or kind of break it down into some bullet points, it'd be really helpful.
I would welcome the opportunity, and I'm sure my colleagues would as well, and we can try to streamline different content around, prevention once you're in the system, and then maybe on the back end, and really try to separate out into, even if those aren't the right buckets, some just broader buckets, so that it's not so many niche recommendations or areas for research that you all then have to kind of parse out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That concludes the public comment portion for today's meeting.
Okay. That being the case, let me ask if somebody wants to make a motion to approve the minutes from July the 1st.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from July 1st.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from July 1st. Is there any in readiness? Any in readiness? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? We move on to old business. Bridget has the unfortunate role of being the person who is actually in the midst of all this, and we've asked her to kind of give us a tour, so she's going to try to give us an overview.
I'm going to go up there just so I can look at the
Okay.
If that's okay. Okay. Do I just hit the green button? Oh, there we go. Magic. Okay. I'm Bridget Gibbons, Deputy Court Administrator here at Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. I'm grateful for this opportunity to go through. Our committee kind of discussed it the first one. It'd probably be helpful to go through some of the information, some of our partnerships, efforts that we have tried thus far to improve outcomes for kids that come into contact with the youth justice system. That way we're not, starting fresh and duplicating some of those efforts. So
But let me say this, Bridget. I think that what I'm going to ask, because I know this is going to come up, we're going to try to let you get through as much as you can today without questions. So I'm going to ask that we write down any questions that we might have.
Okay.
Rather than interrupt you. Okay?
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so The purpose of juvenile court, we just wanted to recenter on our mission statement, is to administer justice, rehabilitate juveniles, support and strengthen families, and promote public safety. As Leah mentioned, we are a JDAI site, so there's some guiding principles that we accomplish this through. Family-centered approach, community-based, and positive youth development focus. I would say the last bullet point is one that we are newly in the process of venturing into, and we'll get into that as we talk about some of our programs. After the meeting last time, our small committee talked about, how we'll be referring to the young people that we're going to discuss. We all agree that it's vital to not lose sight on the folks that we're talking about. So we will interchangeably use youth, adolescents, young people, trying to stick with people first language and humanizing language that doesn't separate the youth from our own kids at home. We understand that some of these kids are involved in the youth justice system for very serious youth or community safety risks and issues, but we want to make sure that we're centering around who we're speaking of. I know when I come home, I don't ask my husband, where are the juveniles? It's where are the kids? So, we just thought that was important when we talk about them. We think it's important here at the court, the community engagement, accountability, and transparency is really something, for the last several years, we've been really working to improve upon. And we're going to go through that for the next couple slides, sort of the venture that we've been on for the last few years. In 2010, the court became a JDAI site, which is Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative, which basically means in the beginning, this is through the Annie A. Casey Foundation, the goal was really to make sure that kids that did not present as a community safety threat were not incarcerated and were not removed from the home. From there, it was a slow start for us. I think we've picked up momentum in recent years on that. In 2015, something I'm very grateful for is the development of programming, training, and quality assurance. That's a department that does internal QA, training court-wide to ensure that everything that we're doing is grounded in JDAI principles. And then in addition to you train your staff, you should always make sure you're doing some type of quality assurance monitoring along with that. So we have quality assurance from the very first point of contact with young people who come into contact through the Early Intervention and Diversion Center all the way into our detention center. 2017, the Center for Children's Law and Policy did a conditions of confinement assessment, and this was supported through the Gun Foundation, partially supported through them, and ACLU, Schubert Center, some of the other partners that still are part of quarterly visits with our court, helped us to get connected to that. And the intention of that was really to look at what's going on in our detention center and work to improve the safety within our facility. In 2019, we applied to become a probation transformation site, which means we get additional consultation technical assistance through the Annie Casey Foundation. And these are folks that are expert in this, and they have a lot of national linkage to people who are getting good outcomes from their systems and better partnership with the community. 2020, we took another opportunity of another federal grant to address sexual safety in our detention center. So we applied for the PREA TIPS grant. We are awarded that. Our current contract is with Just Detention International to improve conditions within our detention center. 2021, the court contracted with Equius Group to do diversity, equity, and inclusion training. We were pretty intentional about not wanting to train and release, just stir up pain points and run. We really tried to be intentional about having a contract with Just Detention International, with Equius Group to help us not just train, but do technical assistance, look at policy, and really spend time with our staff. If we want to talk about, reducing, racial disparities, it's important in-house that we're doing things to make sure our staff feel that they're treated equitably. And in 2022, we began conversations as the Youth Justice Convening, which is a partnership with lots of community-based organizations and interested people in our own community that want to know more and want to be involved in more as it pertains to youth justice reform. 2023, we applied for OJJDP Continuums of Care Grant, and I'll get into talking about that a little bit later. 2023 is also when we opened our doors to Caitlin Durbin and her team to do reporting on the youth justice system. And just one partnership that we do value greatly is our ongoing quarterly meetings with our youth justice advocates and our Citizens Advisory Board. They meet with us, they walk through our detention center, they do, feedback on areas where, maybe we've made progress, but maybe some places we still need to improve upon. So those are just some places I wanted to start with. We are, just to kind of talk about our journey to be transparent and continue to keep an eye on improving outcomes. The OJJDP grant, I think this is a great opportunity for us, and we are really looking forward to this. This is going to be in partnership with Third Sector. It was the Office of Reentry and Case Western Reserve who are partners on this, but many, many people in our own community are going to join us on a asset mapping and gap analysis of how young people come into contact with the youth justice system and ways that we can create other avenues for young people's needs to be met and really get kids tied back into the community so that we can create our continuum of care to reduce racial disparities. And we'll talk about racial disparities as we go through, I think, the next visual. The target population for this is going to be 12 to 17-year-olds and their families that are at risk involvement with the youth justice system. Specifically in Cuyahoga County, when we speak of that, we're speaking of Black youth. Okay. I think this is something that is well known. I know you guys read this information repeatedly in the articles you guys were reading, but trauma with capital T, mental health disorders are very prevalent with the young people who come into contact with the youth justice system. So, when we talk about having meaningful, positive outcomes for these young people, it means we need to attend to these underlying issues that might be the reason that's driving youth into our system. So, statistically speaking, about 70%, this is meta-analysis across the country, have a diagnosable mental health disorder. Detained youth is 92%. If you talk to our detention officers, they will easily tell you 100% have some type of traumatic experience, and 84% of those youth report more than one incident of trauma. And then this was something that was highlighted through the work of Caitlin Durbin, the 66% of youth, I think she got this from the DOJ in Cuyahoga County, who have a history of child welfare involvement. I think those are just 3 bullet points we thought were really important to highlight, because when we talk about who we're talking about, that's who we're talking about. Since we become a JDAI site, in recent years, adolescent brain development has been a hot topic, and understandably so, that we understand teenagers are uniquely different. That high-risk taking behavior is a normal part of adolescent development. And the good news, because there is good news when it comes to youth justice system, most youth grow out of their delinquent behavior. They do not continue into adulthood. But other reasons why this information and data is important for us to understand is there's ways we can make kids worse. And one of those ways is detainment. If we're detaining kids that don't need to be detained, if they're not threatening community safety, and we put them around other kids and put them in locked institutions and pull them away from their protective factors, their families, their pastors, their churches, their coaches, their friends, we can do more harm than good. So that is just the underpinning of the work that we're trying to do, and we're in the process of, you really cannot see this, but we can send you this PowerPoint. You guys will have this. This is just a visual, and the point of this visual is to identify probation transformation. At the top, it's, the goal is to really divert young people away from the youth justice system. A goal of 60% is, I think, a really high bar, and one we'll continue to work towards. But that says that most kids who come into contact with our youth justice system, we're going to try to divert, and we'll go through some of those programs in a little bit. And then you're going to reserve probation, which we try to do for youth whose behaviors jeopardize community safety. And I kind of talked about this in the beginning. Probation has gone from, sanctions, lecturing, pounding our fists, and yelling at kids to trying to look more coach and mentor-like, supporting young people and trying to get them linked into positive exposure activities and positive youth development framework. Family-centered has got to be the key. Families really are the answer. Jen knows this well by all of her programs being family-centered, and all the programs that we contract with the court are family-centered. All right, I'm going to move through that. And then the goals on the other side, the outcome is really more kids diverted, more family engagement, more tapping into community resources that may have always been there, improved positive adult relationships with young people, and increasing community safety and addressing racial disparities in the youth justice system. So in this process over the last couple years, we've had some new programming. I will say some of this is very, very new. We still don't know what this is going to look like for Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court, but we're very excited about it. We have now, after about a 4 to 5 year journey, we have restorative justice programs. We have new mentoring programs. We have more opportunities for educational, vocational, and positive youth development opportunities, and I can share those. Before, we get into those, this is just, a slide I wanted to share because we do oftentimes talk about Cuyahoga County and like counties, which, we'll look at the 3 Cs, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus. While the population in Columbus is significantly larger than that in Cleveland. And again, this is just landscape of violent offenses so that we can be centered in the work that we have to do that's ahead of us. And certainly we're not going to do this on our own. This is going to be in partnership with our community partners. But Cuyahoga County is different. I think oftentimes we look at Franklin County, which is Columbus, and Cincinnati, which is Hamilton County. And the comparisons are sometimes a little difficult to draw, but, you probably can't see that. But overall, that top right bar, Cuyahoga County is the one with the highest referring, and you can see that pretty consistently with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Uniform Crime Reports. This is where this comes from. Now, this is not Cuyahoga County. This is the city of Cleveland. But to put it in perspective, when it comes to robbery offenses, Cleveland is kind of off the charts. It's number 2 in the country. Cincinnati being 13 and Columbus is down at 38. Total violent crime putting Cleveland at number 7, Cincinnati 26, and Columbus 63rd. So, it's just, for us, it's the gravity. It might be the high level of violent crimes, but certainly we know that the solutions that can work for other counties can work for us. So I think that's the promising thing. The other thing we don't want to ignore is, COVID appears, there is that one thing here when COVID hit, the wheels came off for a lot of people. And for young people, they were impacted heavily. These are Ohio homicide counts by the year of 2007 to 2023. You can see that in 2020 to 21, 22, and hopefully we'll see a decrease in this and things will begin to level out. There was a spike in homicides that is factual. I think that everyone feels that and is aware of that. But, hopefully after we get things put back together, families have their 12-step groups to go back to, parents have their therapy, kids are back in school, teachers are present, all those protective factors coming back around families. Hopefully we can level this off and see a decrease in homicides. This is not specific to juvenile homicides, so this is all of them. So I just wanted to say that just to put some context behind it. So we talked as our group, how do kids come into the youth justice system? What is the process for that? So young person is arrested. If it's a felony 1 or 2, there's a gun involved. Those are likely admissions to our detention center, but not always. Our admissions to our detention center is a felony 1 or a 2 with a gun or a sex offense with the victim in the home. So a complaint is filed, it goes through a portal to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office takes a look at that and they review the agreed upon matrix that the court and the prosecutors developed. If the offense is a high-level felony, that might be, those cases go official, automatic diversion for lower-level offenses, and then if there's something going on, maybe it's the kid's second time, but it's not a high-level offense, or it's a high-level offense, it's their first offense, there is a pending assessment, which means that case comes through, it's sent through our early intervention diversion center. We have our intervention specialists screen the youth and provide an assessment, and then that makes a recommendation back up to the prosecutor's office. So when we're talking about a case going through early intervention diversion center, that is what we consider our front gate of the court. And our goal of that program is to divert as many young people as humanly possible. Our specialists do an OYAS, which is a risk assessment tool. We do not make diversion decisions based on the OYAS score. Our funders, because of our funding is through the state, we have to have a risk assessment. What it can do is help us identify the need of intensity of services, but it's not a diversion decision maker. We also do the MAISY, which is a mental health behavioral health assessment, and the SOGI screener, which is a sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression screener. If the young person ticks into flags on the MAISY as a clinical concern, those are then referred to our mental health clinicians through Applewood centers who are in-house with us. So if a kid scores off the chart or flags in a certain domain on the MAISY, the mental health clinician then does a more comprehensive behavioral health assessment of the young person, looks at what services they have in place, and makes a recommendation back to the court of what to do with that young person. Okay, so available services I'm going to get into, so I won't go into that. Okay. Oof. All righty. Sorry. I actually need one of those packets. Okay, so this roadmap is actually a tool, the Annie Casey Foundation. The purpose of this is to really show what off-ramps and opportunities for diversion do young people have in the youth justice system. And you guys all have a copy of this. Certainly, we can make this available. So, the concept of this is to look at, how do courts and community partners work to divert kids away from the youth justice system? The first most, quote unquote, pure diversion that we have is called Project Calm. It's a domestic violence diversion. And what we wanted to do is we do try to collect data around gender, race, ethnicity, geography, age, and level of offense. So Project Calm is a police officer is called out to a home. There's a domestic violence incident. This is where adults and kids are very different. Adults, domestic violence, intimate partner abuse has very different dynamics that require law enforcement to remove someone from the home. When kids are charged with domestic violence, it's oftentimes family discord, it can be parental mental health, it can be parental substance abuse, it could be, the kids' behavioral health symptoms overwhelm the caregiver's ability to deal with the youth and keep them safe. So police use this, and what we do, and I'll get into that a little bit later, I apologize. So we do try to put race, if you can see that, in Project Calm, there were 185 referrals, which represented 176 kids. 90% of the kids that came into Project Calm that were diverted away from the youth justice system were children of color. And more girls than boys on this, 45% were males. So that's the first off-ramp that we have. The next is, just a visual that shows you there were 5,259 cases referred to the court, which represents about 3,457 youth. Those that came into the court overall are 76% of young people that come to the attention of the court overall are youth of color. So then on the left side, the next off-ramp that is offered is what I just talked about, which was the early intervention. Oh, no, before I get into that, this is truancy and unruly filings. So this is a young person whose parents say this kid's behavior is more than I can handle. I'm filing unruly, or it's school districts filing for truancy because the kid is not attending. I actually thought this was quite shocking to see that 86% of those youth that are referred to the court for unruly and truancy are also children of color. And a little more than half, at 65%, are males. I'm sorry, 45% are males. I've got to bring this closer. I should have brought my glasses up here. So then the next side on the right is our Early Intervention and Diversion Center. So this is about 1,300 referrals, which represent 1,314 youth. And this is through our Early Intervention Diversion Center. The success rate on that is defined as, did the kid complete the diversion case plan that we put in place for them? And that's, I think it's 81%. Jen, you got glasses on. That's an 81% success rate. So, you know, that is something that's before they're coming into contact with probation. As far as cases that go official, you know, we're really, you know, looking at about 83% are youth of color, 73% are males. I'm going to go through this quickly. We do have another off-ramp, which means if the case went through diversion and failed diversion, or if the prosecutor's office felt this had to go official, we have our judges that are able to refer cases back into the Early Intervention Diversion Center, and they did that 82 times last year. And that was 50 of those youth were successful, with 32 who are still receiving referrals. So again, we're trying to, the best we can, to off-ramp kids away from the formal court processing. And then over to the right are two of our specialty dockets, which is safe harbor and drug court. And as you can see, you know, this is the one place where white youth represent more than black youth in the youth justice system, and that is the drug court, with majority of those being male participants. And then is that 84% of youth of color that are actually placed on probation. And then on the last visual, am I on the last one? I really can't see. We have, no. Okay, so then we're looking at deeper into the youth justice system. We're talking about kids that are going to residential treatment, so they're placed out of the home. In 2023, we had 83 youth placed out of the home by the court. 83% of these are youth of color, 55% being males. And then the courts, I'm going to get into explaining what CBTC is, but it's another specialized residential placement, and those were 11 youth, with 91% being children of color. And that program is set up predominantly for males, so that breakdown in gender does not surprise me. CCFs, which are community correctional facilities, you can see there, again, 93% are youth of color, 93% are males. ODYS in 2023, this is a calendar year, 89 youth were placed in DYS, 91% youth of color, and all at 96% male. And then on the far bottom right is our, our bind over youth. Youth with cases filed in criminal court. That was 58 mandatories, 19 discretionary. It includes, and this number includes 2 youth who had both discretionary and mandatory bind over. So this is calendar year 2023 data. Again, the point of this visual is to really talk about how we're trying to divert kids away. I talked a little bit about Project Calm, which is our DV diversion. The court funds a bed at a local group home, and this allows for law enforcement to have a safe place to bring the youth. It diverts the kid fully away from the youth justice system, never to return. I don't include this in here, but there was a time when we originally started looking at this, we had 300 to 400 kids a year housed in our detention center, for the highest offense being a domestic violence. And I can tell you the range and length of stay went anywhere from like 1 day to months in the detention center, with a parent refusing to take the youth home or not being able to provide a safety plan to take care of that young person. So this has almost eliminated the use of detention for domestic violence cases. It also allows law enforcement to get back into the field much quicker. So there were 637 referrals, 544 of those were eligible youth. There are some exclusions for this program. If there's a weapon involved, if the victim is hospitalized, those would be excluding them. Majority of the cases are coming through the city of Cleveland, and this is data from 2021 to 2023. So this program has certainly helped us to keep unnecessary detainments away from our detention center. I talked about the Early Intervention Diversion Center. That was started in 2019, I believe February of 2019. The goal of that was to increase diversion options and allow for kids to be immediately linked with services. Historically, we used to hold off until a kid was dispoed in order for them to get an effective treatment, which for a family probably felt like a lifetime. Our Early Intervention Diversion Center allows us to do an assessment as soon as a kid comes into contact with the court and get services into place as quickly as possible versus waiting till disposition. It also will slow down any subsequent offenses that kid could pick up along the way had they not had an intensive family therapy or whatever referral we give them. Another intentional focus of the EIDC is to reduce racial disparities, to provide programmings. It used to be that, depending on what community you were from, you could get a plethora of services. And if you're in an under-resourced community, your services might not be as available. So what we at the court said is we'll fund whatever it takes to help divert these kids away. And if it's something that we're going to tap into that the court has typically reserved for kids on probation, let's move that up. We'll pay for services in lieu of bringing them into the court. So, and that has paid off, and I'll show you the visual on how that's paid off for us. There are 2 tracks or tiers of diversion. The first is like what we like to refer to as our lightest touch. It's really to keep kids, the more hands-on you go, the more likely you're going to suck them into the system. So we try to keep this short, hold them accountable, and keep it moving. We have now introduced restorative justice. We have restitution. The court actually is doing some work around funding restitution to help young people who can't maybe come out of their pocket for restitution, but they can do the community service. Those are some interventions to try to reduce racial disparities. Then there's the care coordination side, and I would like to describe this as, this is for kids that are sort of repeat in diversion. This is for kids whose mental health needs might be, they need more than the lightest touch. They might need an intensive family therapy like multisystemic therapy, integrative co-occurring therapy. They have care coordinators that all have experience doing mental health care coordination. If they need school-based substance abuse, other types of intensive supports, they can also tap into restorative justice programming. These are just some services available, and I actually talked about those already, so I'm going to skim past this pretty quickly. Apology, family-centered treatment, community diversion programs, restorative justice. This is the year of 2023, how kids come in through our early intervention diversion center. As you can see, the majority at 60% are coming in as misdemeanors. That blue is status offenses, so you can see there's still a ton of kids coming, but we do keep them away from our formal court processing. And then the small gray is felony level offenses, so we actually do divert some felony level offenses through early intervention diversion center. Successful, and I think that says 84%. Okay, all right, yeah, maybe I'll move over there in a minute. So, this, I could do that by clicking from there, right? Yeah, okay. I'm going to do that if that's okay with you all. Thanks. Thanks, Jen, for your logic.
Just speak into your microphone louder.
Okay. All righty. Okay. So going back, okay, so probation services, you're going to see some of the effects of our early intervention diversion center when we start going through some of this. So, Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court is a probation transformation site, which means we get extra technical assistance from the Annie Casey Foundation. They subcontract with different advocacy groups in the country, and our current provider is Catalyzed Justice, and I can say these folks have done really amazing stuff across the country. We're grateful to have their expertise. They've already started to tap us into all sorts of resources across the country. This also means that we have incorporated Annie Casey Foundation JDAI probation transformation into our onboarding of all new staff in probation and our early intervention diversion center, which incorporates trauma training, adolescent development, implicit bias training, the importance of positive youth development. And so we also, like I said, have exposure to other jurisdictions and experts in the field of juvenile justice. And we'll get to the slides, but some of the results of this work has led to increased diversion for misdemeanor youth, reserving probation supervision for higher risk, trying to move away from compliance-based probation into a mindset of positive youth development with incentives for kids to obtain their goals. We've also had a reduction of youth being placed in detention on violations of court orders. They're using intermediate sanctions to help youth maintain safely in the community, and we'll talk about some of those alternatives. And then the last one is just engagement with some of our community partners. This is as of April 16th. This is the number of youth we have on probation, which comes out to about 31.29 cases for PO. That is too high for working with young people, and we would, this is something that we really are trying to be intentional about, diverting and utilizing specialty docs as much as possible. But when we're talking about creating meaningful mentorship, coach-like relationships with young people, our goal is to really reduce those caseload sizes. I will say this visual right here, which the yellow is misdemeanor and the 73% in blue is felony. This is the makeup of our current youth on probation and their highest level offense. A few years ago, this was reversed. So we had majority of kids on probation were misdemeanors, where a smaller fraction was felony. So this, I think, tells me we're doing some of the right stuff by diverting those misdemeanors away as much as possible. This is also level offense by year. This is just a little bit more for those sitting back that can't see this. The first year on the left is 2017, and the yellow represents felonies. So you can see the misdemeanors were surpassing the felonies, and we still had a lot of kids on formal court involvement with unrulies and truancies, which means no criminal behavior, just unruly or school-based behaviors. You can see that slowly in 2019 is the year that we started the Early Intervention Diversion Center, and then 2020 happened. So there is a pretty significant reduction of misdemeanors being placed on probation, but you can see an increase in those felonies and an elimination in the last 2 years of status offenses for being placed on probation, which is great. These are the placements by year. The yellow is residential. Those are what the court contracts with. So we pay for these placements when a kid's behavior has exceeded every other option in the community, and the only way that we can keep those young people safe is through residential placements. CCFs are the community correctional facilities, and CBTC is the locked facility that we contract with through Applewood Centers. But residential placements are down 82% since 2017, and I think that's a pretty big, that's a pretty significant reduction. We do try to get and look at, are we being successful? And this is probation recidivism. I'll just go through these relatively quickly. But it's about, of the kids that we looked at, which was 666 youth that were terminated from probation in 2020, 471 did not have any recidivism. 71% did not incur a new delinquency charge 1 year post starting their probation. This is another one that is commitment to DYS, and this is probably more the work of the statewide efforts to reduce youth being committed to DYS and really 2010, 2012, 14, 16 was really trying to make sure that we had good, effective community-based services within Cuyahoga County to reduce our utilization on ODYS placements. We do have specialty dockets, and I'm not going to get too far into those, but Safe Harbor is for our youth that are at risk of survivor of human trafficking, and that's by Judge Jennifer O'Malley and Magistrate Holly Welsh. We have a family recovery court that is in collaboration with DCFS for parents who are obtaining treatment for substance use disorders. Reentry court, which is a partnership with Ohio Department of Youth Services, where kids are returning to our community. And we have a juvenile drug court, which seems obvious, and Phoenix Court, which is our mental health disorders and co-occurring disorder, a court for them that specializes in those services. Just to go through this, the Phoenix Court this was pulled from 2020 to 2023. We terminated 68 youth from that program at a 67% success rate. You know, these are some kids that are coming into the courts because of significant behavioral health issues. So trying to create a specialty docket that serves these youth, and this is the outcomes that we have at this point in time. Success rate means, did you complete successfully? It doesn't have anything to do with recidivism. Juvenile drug court, this is the one where 51 youth were terminated in those 3 years with a 63% success rate.
Let me interrupt
Sure.
you there for just a second, because we're coming up on close to an hour.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, first of all, is there an appropriate place where you think you could break?
I think we could probably break right here.
Okay. And then I'd like to ask both Marvin and Jennifer if they have any questions about what they've heard so far.
For myself, it's just, once again, it's a lot of information. It's very good information. And I guess we just have to meet more and just try to figure out the best way to deal with it. I mean, this is a very complex issue. And as I spoke before, I don't want to be involved in anything if we're not going to get anything accomplished. But it's not going to be done overnight. I can see that right now. I wish we could have it done in 2 months, but unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. But we're going to try all that we can to try to. We got a great team here. It's just going to be some hard work, and I'm not afraid of hard work.
So, just to kind of echo what Marvin has said, there's no question but that this is, first of all, thank you. I mean, this is really useful with regard to figuring out where things are. It does not necessarily help me a whole lot in figuring out where we need to go.
Mr. Chair, if you could speak directly into your microphone.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It does not necessarily help us figure out where we need to go. I saw a couple of things in here that's kind of suggested some budgetary types of things that juvenile court might be interested in. And so I think that as we're going through, it might be useful at some point for you to flag those places where you could use more physical resources, especially since the council had indicated that that was kind of a priority for them.
So there are, we can maybe get into this as part two, like one of the barriers that we're having currently is, that alternative to detention options, which are, few and far between at this point in time, but we can get into that next time when we start talking about alternatives to detention, respite, or just community-based supports to help young people who are in crisis. There are a lot of efforts in the county that I think Jen can maybe even help sort of co-present on some of those initiatives in the county. And I can just kind of share some of the barriers, because I will say, law enforcement oftentimes is carrying a lot with young people, and don't know that, well, you would know this well, but, you know, sometimes officers can be stuck with young people kind of pinging between the both systems up to 6 hours, you know, almost an entire shift, because that's an area of concern. So, but we can maybe talk about that next meeting. We can dig into that.
I kind of heard you loud and clear with regard to the fact that your probation caseloads are too large. And that would sort of suggest that perhaps some additional staff might also be an area that you might want to look at.
Yeah, and I think right now, coming off of COVID, we're also seeing, you know, a really pretty significant decline in some of our alternative to detention options, our specialized behavioral health therapists that typically work with these young people to make diversion as successful as possible.
I think we've certainly seen, in terms of respite, a big decrease in availability of foster homes, places for kids to go and cool down. You know, people didn't want to do that during COVID. They didn't want to manage remote learning. People were worried about getting sick. And I think that helping reinvest in that sort of network of respite is really important, because we do see, especially with Project Calm, if you can cool down for 24 hours, it really does help us come to a place where we can make a plan that is successful and keeps kids out of the recidivism. And then I would say, in terms of the workforce, the same thing, right? We saw lots of people that wanted to work from home, do teletherapy, telehealth. We know with kids that doesn't work, right? We need to meet them where they are, and we need to engage the families. We can't treat a kid in a vacuum. Even school-based services need to have a parent component. So most of the agencies do year-round services. They're going to the homes. They're seeing kids when school's closed. They're seeing kids after school. They're working with families. We know that if we don't have some type of guardian support, you know, we see kids coming back into the system. So ways that we can help engage and help have that invested adult is really important. Even mentoring programs, you know, there just aren't the people there. And so I think those are places that our kids desperately need some extra support.
So I have I don't know, I guess it's maybe because I'm not as educated on as I'm trying to get. I look at what Bridget sent us, it's a lot of different programs, and I see people out here that have came and told us the different programs that are going on. I'm just trying to figure out where is the disconnect? Why is it not working? Where do we figure out what programs are working? And I mean, like a lot of people know me, I'll be real. I know everybody want to do their own thing, and everybody got their own agendas. But at the end of the day, if a program is not working, why we keep doing it? And I'm not saying that's the way it is, because I'm not that knowledgeable, but it just seems like when I read all these lists of programs, and then we still got the numbers that we have, and you still got to ask for more help, something is not working, unless I'm just crazy.
But the other thing that I'm
not
seeing, Marv, is that it seems like there's an awful lot of things that are working. Okay, so it's almost a cognitive dissonance, because on the one hand, it looks like a lot of people are getting diverted out of the system that otherwise would have been retained in the system. We're still seeing high levels of of violent criminal activity that's coming into the court that has to be addressed, and there still seems to be, a plethora of programs to deal with that. So the question, really, from my perspective, is: are these all the right programs? And if we were going to try to winnow things down, what will we use as the criteria for making decisions about which programs need to be retained, which need to be modified, which need to be eliminated? Those are questions that come to mind for me, and it seems to me that from the standpoint of the court's administration, those questions are probably questions that are ongoing with them all the time. So again, as we said, all we're going to do is advise. So any kind of advice that we can get from the court or from the community about what they're seeing as it relates to the programs that are already up and running and functioning would be useful, because all these programs may be operating well on some level, okay? But it's so many, you know.
And I would just add, I think to, programs, I think there's a plethora of research out there that tells you what works for these young people who are justice involved. I think, there is an unusual shortage of behavioral health people in respite homes, which would be helpful to help kids in crisis. But there's also a need for, service coordination, effective service coordination when we talk about, young people with significant trauma issues and family discord that's happening. And these young people go out and do something that's significant, it might require a lot more coordination of services in a meaningful manner. Like if we have child welfare involved, we have the Board of Developmental Disabilities involved, we have the court involved, ensuring, and I hope this is the work of OJJDP to help us to coordinate these services more effectively to catch youth at an earlier point. Like I said, kids don't wake up one day and choose to put a gun in their hand and pull people over on the side of the road and engage in a carjacking. There's a lot that leads up to that young person's story. Certainly not excusing that. No one wants to be on the receiving end of that event. Those are very significant. But if we really want to interrupt these incidents, we've got to move this up. We've got to address these issues when there's warnings, when a kid starts to fail out of school, when there's a call to DCFS that a family's overwhelmed, or there's an incident of violence in the home. There are communities that are, really addressing on a county-wide level a trauma-informed response. And I think Cuyahoga County is on the cusp of that with a lot of the work that many people are doing. But we have to apply that to both those that are the victims of these offenses, because a lot of times these are young people who down the road end up back in our system. They end up in our system. They come in as victims and they end up in our system later in life. So, but also, supports to those that have been harmed by violence in the community. And I think Cuyahoga County is doing a lot of that. And again, I'll go back to, I really hope the OJJDP continuums of care can bring together resources to help. But yeah, I think figuring out ways to get behavioral health therapists in. We have 2 therapists right now at our court's multi-systemic therapy team. We used to have 8. Jen, your team's got 3, so these are programs that we know have good outcomes. They have really positive outcomes and they sustain families for generations. It's just figuring out how we get these people back into the work of wanting to go in folks' homes and do the work in their living rooms.
I think we've been trying to do a lot of work at the state level to help reinvest that community and home-based piece, helping people go back out into, meeting kids where they are. But I think that...
Ms. Yaram, if you could speak louder.
Sure.
Thank you.
But I think that also there's so many parallel initiatives happening, in the behavioral health field, that same pull on the workforce that we're seeing locally.
The problem for me is, in large part, capturing all of these disparate parts and pulling them together for purposes of making a final report. So I've been trying to take notes, but my notes are all over the place, and I'm just a little concerned about how we get this all to gel. As I said, this is a lot of good information. There's a lot of things that are pointed out here during today's session that gives us a real good overview of some of the challenges that are facing the juvenile court and those who are providing services to you. Now our job is going to be to try to put and as I think I had told you guys last time around, I'd like for us to have some kind of idea as how we're going to pull that report together, and we should be building this airplane as we fly it, because I don't think that we're going to be able to get to the end of the day and have to go back and capture everything that we're talking about now and then try to make a report from it. So any suggestions that you guys have as it relates to that, or just even any thoughts that you may have, I'd appreciate it if you could kind of jot them down so we could talk about that maybe as part of the next session. We are now over an hour, and so I'm ready to give you a break, Bridget. But knowing that you're going to be in the captain's chair next time too, okay? Because we didn't. I don't even think we got halfway through what you had prepared for us, and so there's still a lot of things that we need to do. And I need to ask Andrea if she can have Janine talk to me about the process of putting together a final report so that we can start having some conversation about what that's going to look like and who are the people who need to be intimately involved in making sure that we have a good work product.
Duly noted.
Okay, so I think we will conclude. We're still in old business. New business will be old business next time. Because we still haven't figured out exactly how we want to divide up the activities. We haven't taken a look at the activities yet. And I don't think that we can even begin to do that until we get through Bridget's piece. So the next meeting will be pretty much geared towards trying to complete the balance of the overview. And then at that juncture, I think we'll start to talk about some of the other miscellaneous things that we have to do. Is there anything that any of you have a burning desire to talk about at this point? Okay. If not, we need to find another date. And I feel really bad about the fact that we have we met on July 1st. This is now, what, the 19th of August, so we've lost more than a month and a half. And although they've been generous to say that we could, extend past December the 31st, I don't know about y'all, but I really don't want to. So when can we get back together? I'm relatively fluid. But you and Jennifer are working, so I know that Rob has some.
Mr. Chair, if you could speak a little louder in the microphone, please. Thank you.
Robert McClellan has a level of flexibility too, but I think that we should be rotating on your axis. Okay. So, a week from today would be the 24th.
A week from today would be the 26th. After that, it's August 2nd. I'm sorry, September 2nd.
Second's a holiday, but
Yeah.
about another day that week. I can't do the 6th, but beyond that, I'm good.
It doesn't have to be a Monday after all. It's up to you guys.
Perfect. 5th works.
Thursday, the 5th of September.
At what time?
Morning.
Yeah, I can do morning too. I've got something in the afternoon. What? Okay, what time? Any,
What time is good for you? So you've been having your meetings lately at 3, I think. So this is the second meeting. So
First one was at 9, this one was
Okay.
at 3. When, is this room available?
yes,
let's do 9 o'clock. Is that a good? So September the 5th at 9 o'clock. And we'll pick up where we've left off. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded that we adjourn. Hearing no readiness on the motion, we stand adjourned until September the 5th at 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.